The hallway light cut in like a knife. I was 23, hands covering my head as she raised the wooden massage roller again. The door cracked open. My father stood there for 3 seconds, watching, then pulled it shut. Silence. 10 years later. As his silence was about to become complicity in front of a full room, I'd already placed an empty chair center stage, leaving it to him to decide whether to take it. My name is Lena Calder, in Seattle. That name means something. It means Verveline Systems, the biomedical supply chain startup I co-founded. It means clean data, predictive logistics, and an infrastructure that ensures a rural hospital gets the same access to critical supplies as a downtown trauma center. I am 28 years old, and my world is built on code, accountability, and the measurable, verifiable truth. My life is a fortress of logic. This morning, a single email breached the wall. It arrived at 9:03, just as I was running the final diagnostics on the Aurelius integration build. The sender was an anonymous string of characters. The subject line was just 2 words. He knew. My inbox is a curated space. It is for contracts, developer queries, and server alerts. This was none of those. I almost deleted it as spam. But something in its starkness held my hand. I clicked. There was no text in the body, just one attachment, a single image file. I downloaded it to my sandboxed environment. My first instinct was not fear, but analysis. I ran the metadata. The file was clean. The EXIF data was fully intact, raw and unedited. Camera model. A long discontinued brand. One Marla had installed years ago to watch a nanny and then forgot about. Creation date, 5 years prior. October 18th. Time, 22:17 and 4 seconds. I opened the file. The image was grainy, taken from a high corner. It was the kitchen of the Indianapolis house I had not seen since I was 23. The fluorescence of the kitchen lights gave everything a sick, flat quality. There was my own, younger self, crouched by the pantry, arm raised to cover my face. There was Marla Pierce, my stepmother, her body rigid, her arm a blur of motion as she swung the heavy wooden massage roller. This part, I remembered. This part was the scar tissue I lived with, the foundational memory of my adult life. But there was something new, a piece of data I did not possess. In the doorway, caught between the warm light of the hall and the sterile white of the kitchen, was a silhouette, a man, standing tall, his shoulders filling the frame. He was not moving forward to stop it. He was not recoiling in shock. He was just standing, observing. I zoomed in, my hand steady on the mouse. The pixels broke apart, but the shape was unmistakable, the line of his jaw, the way he held his left hand. It was my father, Greg Calder. The email's subject line echoed in the quiet of my office. He knew. I had always told myself he didn't. I had constructed my entire departure on a different narrative. I had left because Marla was violent and he was weak, absent, unavailable. I had left because he was never there. The photograph was a data correction. He was there. He was there. He saw it, and he backed away. The memory, suppressed for 5 years, returned with the clarity of a high-resolution feed. It wasn't just the image, it was the audio track, the clatter of the roller as she took it from the hook, her voice, thick with wine and resentment. "You are an inconvenience, Lena, a parasite in my home." The argument had started over nothing, a dish left in the sink, and had escalated, as it always did, into a referendum on my very existence. I remembered the sting of the first blow across my back. I remembered curling up, the cold of the linoleum floor against my cheek. And then, the sound, the creak of the hinge. A sliver of hope, a pause in her assault. I had looked up, just enough to see the door crack open, to see his shape. 3 seconds. He stood there for 3 seconds. I saw his eyes, clear and focused, assess the scene. He looked at me, crouched on the floor. He looked at his wife, arm raised, face contorted. Then, he made a choice. He pulled the door slowly toward him. his hand leaving the frame. The latch clicked. The silence that followed was absolute. She had stared at the closed door, her breath heavy, and then she had lowered her arm. The moment had passed. The witness was gone. I left the next morning. I packed one bag, took the $2,000 I had saved from my internship, and got on a bus to Chicago. Then a train west. I did not leave a note. I did not answer his calls. I had built my peace on that one. Fragile lie. He was not a participant, just a negligent bystander. The image on my screen was the truth. His retreat was not passivity, it was an action. He had seen the fire and quietly closed the door, leaving me inside. My phone vibrated, pulling me from the memory, a calendar reminder. 2 p.m., final review of the Aurelius health pitch. The irony was acidic. Today was the day Verve Systems was set to finalize the single largest contract of its existence, an $80 million deal to overhaul the entire supply chain infrastructure for the Aurelius Health Hospital network. This contract was my validation. It was the proof that my logic, my code, my system of truth worked. It was the final brick in the fortress. I closed the image, my heart hammering a cold, steady rhythm against my ribs. I opened a new browser tab. I already knew what I was going to find, but data requires verification. I typed in Greg Calder Aurelius Health. The press release was dated 2 days ago. Aurelius Health welcomes visionary leader Greg Calder to board of directors. The room tilted. This was not a coincidence. This was a convergence. My father, the man who had silently watched me be beaten, was now a director at the very company whose contract would define my career. His world of quiet handshakes, of convenient silences and powerful boards, was colliding with my world of hard facts and verifiable data. I knew, with chilling certainty, that he had no idea Verve Systems was my company. To him, Lina Calder had simply vanished 5 years ago. I was a loose end he had long since tied off. My fingers moved to another tab, Instagram. Marla's profile was public, a curated feed of galas. Perfect family moments, and beige interiors. A new post had gone up less than an hour ago. It was a photo of her, Greg, and my stepsister Savannah, all posed and professionally lit. Greg looked distinguished. Marla was radiant. The caption was nauseating. So incredibly proud of my husband, Greg Calder, on his appointment to the Aurelius Health Board. We are so excited to be attending the Aurelius Family First fundraiser gala this week. It is a blessing to be part of a community that values integrity and compassion. Aurelius Health Family is everything blessed. I stared at the screen, the 3 data points converging into a single, horrifying hypothesis. The anonymous email with the photo, my father's appointment to the board, Marla's public celebration, explicitly linking their perfect family to Aurelius. My father's retreat 5 years ago was not just a moment, it was a strategy, a lifestyle. He had built his entire career on not making things complicated, on presenting a flawless public face while letting others clean up the messes. He had traded my safety for his peace. And now, that same strategy was intersecting with my life's work, the contract with Aurelius. Did he know I was behind Verveline? Probably not. Would he advocate for this anonymous, brilliant startup as a way to burnish his own credentials as a visionary leader? Absolutely. The $80 million deal, my $80 million deal, was about to be tainted by his proximity. My success would be attributed to his influence. Marla would toast it at her fundraisers. His silence, his complicity, was about to become the foundation for my public achievement. I would not allow it. The vow of silence I had made 5 years ago was not just about my pain, it was about my survival. I had traded the truth for a chance to build a life where I was safe, but this was different. This was not just about the past, it was about the present. It was about my work, my company, and the very definition of integrity. My decision was instant. It was cold. It was precise. I was going to break my silence. This was not about airing dirty laundry. It was not about seeking pity or playing the victim. It was about correcting the record. It was about exposing the flawed infrastructure of a system that allows a man to watch a child be assaulted, close the door, and then, 5 years later, accept a position on a hospital board under the banner of integrity. I looked back at the email. He knew. I forwarded the message to my personal, encrypted drive. I opened a new file, a project plan. My father's silence, Marla's performance, the Aurelius contract. They were all data points in a single, flawed system. And I, Lena Calder, am a data engineer. I do not hide bad data. I expose it, I clean it, and I rebuild the system from the ground up. The central question of my life had just crystallized. It was not, why did this happen to me? It was something far more technical. When the adults in the room, the ones with the power, choose the convenience of silence, who, exactly, throws the punch, and who is designated to take the hit? I had taken the hit for 5 years. The payment was now due. My fortress of logic was not built in a day. It was built on the ruins of a childhood in Indianapolis. A childhood defined not by overt cruelty, but by 1,000 subtle erosions of space. I was the convenient child. My existence was permissible as long as it required no additional effort, created no friction, and occupied no valuable emotional real estate. Marla arrived when I was 12, a whirlwind of beige cashmere and sharp, floral perfume. She brought with her Savannah, her daughter, who was my age but existed in a different spectrum of light. Marla was a master of social theater, and Savannah was her permanent leading lady. Every family event, every holiday, every simple Tuesday night dinner was a production staged for Savannah's benefit. I was not an actor in these plays. I was, at best, backstage crew. At worst, I was an obstacle in the lighting. Thanksgiving was the clearest example. Marla loved a grand table. She would spend days arranging heirloom china and silk floral runners. There would be 16 chairs set for 15 guests, because Savannah always needed an extra seat for her purse, her coat, or simply her presence. My seat was never set. "Oh, Lena, honey, we'll just add a chair for you," Marla would say every year, waving a dismissive hand. "Greg, darling, can you grab the folding chair from the hall?" My father, Greg, would look up from his paper, his face a mask of mild inconvenience. "Lena, just wait. We'll sort it out when everyone arrives. Don't complicate things." "Don't complicate things" was his mantra. It was the gospel according to Greg Calder. It meant, do not have needs, do not have feelings, do not exist in a way that requires me to intervene, to choose, or to expend capital. To be added later was a synonym for never. I ate my Thanksgiving dinner on a stool at the kitchen counter, listening to the laughter from the dining room, while Marla told a charming story about Savannah's equestrian trials. I learned to make myself small, to blend into the grout lines of the tile. This erasure was a masterclass in social mechanics. It was never done with a shout. It was done with composition. Look at the family photographs from that era. They hang in the hallway of that Indianapolis house, a gallery of perfected moments. In every single one, I am on the absolute fringe. My shoulder is just in frame. My face is obscured by the blur of someone's arm as they gesture, or hidden behind the artful flicker of a centerpiece candle. Savannah is always in the center, bathed in light, her hand in Greg's, her other hand held by Marla. A perfect, impenetrable triangle. I was not cropped out. I was simply never framed in the first place. The gift-giving was another data stream. Christmas, my 16th birthday. Savannah received gold bracelets, delicate necklaces, a down payment on her first car. Her gifts were announcements of her value. My gifts were practical: a subscription to a science magazine, a new hard drive for the computer, a set of beige towels for the college dorm I would one day occupy. Her gifts said, "You are adored." Mine said, "You are an expense to be managed." Greg was the silent financier of this disparity. He would watch me unwrap a graphing calculator while Savannah wept with joy over a diamond pendant, and he would nod, satisfied. Good. Practical. You'll get a lot of use out of that. Lena. He saw no imbalance, or if he did, he categorized it under don't complicate things. Marla's primary house rule, the one that superseded all others, was silence keeps the peace. This was her operating system. It meant that any expression of discomfort, any challenge to the narrative, was an act of aggression. To ask why was to start a war. To say that's not fair was to throw a grenade. And Greg, my father, was a conscientious objector in all family conflicts. He used his work as a shield. He was always on a call, always in a meeting, always just stepping out the door to catch a flight. His absence was his alibi. He could not be held accountable for the emotional sniper fire in his own home because he was never technically on the battlefield. He was in the war room, miles away, looking at maps and managing larger concerns. His absenteeism was a resource Marla spent freely. She was the queen of a territory he had willingly ceded. The night it all shattered, the night captured in that grainy security file, was the culmination of this system. It was not an anomaly, it was an inevitability. The peace Marla had curated with silence was the tense, pressurized quiet before an explosion. I was 23, home for a brief, obligatory visit after graduation, packing my final things before my move to the West Coast. The argument began, as it always did, with an accusation of my inconvenience, a box left in the hallway, a space I was taking up. "You float through this house like a ghost," Marla hissed, her voice low. She had been drinking. A ghost who still costs money. The insults were familiar. They were the background radiation of my life with her. I usually just absorbed them, but that night, I was days from freedom. I was packing my life into boxes. I was already halfway out the door. "It's just a box, Marla. I'll move it in 5 minutes." "It's not the box, Lena. It's you. It's the space you occupy, the air you breathe. Greg and I, we were fine. Savannah was fine. And then there's always you, the complication." "I am his daughter," I said, my voice quiet, but it felt loud in the stillness. That was the mistake. I had spoken. I had challenged the narrative. "You are nothing," she said. "You are his mistake, a loose end he was too weak to tie off." She grabbed the massage roller from its hook on the wall. It was a heavy, knuckled piece of wood. She pointed it at me. "You want to talk about being his daughter? You have his weakness. You have his inability to just be quiet." She swung. It wasn't a slap. It was a blow. It caught me on the shoulder, and the force of it sent me stumbling back. I cried out. I raised my hands to cover my head, crouching by the pantry as she raised it again, her face a mask of pure, distilled resentment. "Stop, Marla, stop." And that is when the door opened. That is when Greg stood there. He did not rush in. He did not yell. He just appeared. He saw the weapon. He saw his wife, panting. He saw his daughter, cowering. He took in all the data. His eyes met mine. In that 1 second, I saw everything. I saw the calculation. I saw the cost-benefit analysis. Intervening meant conflict. It meant a scene. It meant upsetting Marla. It meant the end of his quiet evening. It meant, in his language, complications. Doing nothing meant I would absorb it. I always had. I was the designated shock absorber for the entire family system. He made the choice. He pulled the door closed, and the latch clicked into place. The act of him closing the door was louder than the blow had been. It was a verdict. Marla froze, her arms still raised. The presence of the witness, and the subsequent rejection of the witness role, seemed to look even her. She lowered the roller. She stared at the door. She looked at me. Her eyes suddenly sober and, for a second, afraid. She had been seen. But the door remained closed. The footsteps retreated down the hall. She had been seen, and the witness had endorsed her. I did not say another word. I stood up, the pain blooming across my back. I walked past her, out of the kitchen, and up to my room. I locked the door. I did not sleep. I sat on the floor and finished packing. I packed my beige towels, my graphing calculator, and my laptop. At 5 in the doi, I walked out of that house. I took my bag and the $2,000 I had saved. As I walked down the driveway to the street, I made a promise to myself. It was cold and clear in the Indianapolis dawn. I would not look back. I would build a life so far removed from this one, so solid, that they could never touch it. I would not return. Not ever. Unless it was to end it, properly, on my terms. I had built my new life. I had built Verveline. I had built my fortress. Now, 5 years later, they had found the gate, and my father, the man who had closed the door on me, was standing on the battlements of my greatest achievement, ready to claim it as his own. The memory was no longer a dull ache. It was a blueprint. It was the system architecture of my own family, and I finally had the key to the server room. I did not build Verveline systems out of a desire for revenge. I built it out of a need for order, in a world of messy emotions, convenient lies, and curated realities. Data does not lie. Code is either functional or it is broken. A supply chain is either efficient or it is wasteful. There is no ambiguity. My co-founder, Maya Rutledge, was the first person I met in Seattle who understood this. We were both data engineers at a sprawling tech conglomerate, assigned to a project optimizing ad delivery. I was disgusted by the waste of talent. Maya was bored. "We're using petabytes of processing power to find new ways to sell people soda," she said to me one day over coffee. Meanwhile, I just read an article about a hospital in rural Oregon that ran out of blood plasma because their ordering system is still on paper. That conversation was the seed. We left our jobs 6 months later. We pooled our savings, maxed out our credit cards, and started building Verveline. Our platform is not glamorous. It does not cure diseases. It does not invent new medicines. It does, however, ensure that the people who do cure diseases have the tools they need, when they need them. We use real-time analytics to track and predict the flow of everything from surgical gloves to chemotherapy drugs. We optimize, we streamline, we eliminate waste. We built our company on 2 principles: clean data and transparent contracts. We do not do backroom deals. We do not hire consultants who are friends with hospital boards. We do not inflate our numbers. Our algorithm and our ethics are our entire sales pitch. It was a slower, harder road. But after 4 years, our reputation was pristine. Our systems were running in 24 hospitals across the Pacific Northwest, and our failure rate was less than 0.1%. Maya is my partner. She is the COO, the pragmatist to my systems architect. She is also the only person on Earth who knows the story. She found out 2 years in, after a brutal 72-hour coding session to fix a critical bug. We were exhausted, running on fumes and stale pizza. I had my hair pulled back, and she just pointed, her expression unreadable. "What happened to your ear, Lena?" I instinctively touched the small, silver line of scar tissue hidden in the crease where my ear meets my skull. It was from a different incident, not the roller. This was from a heavy signet ring on Marla's hand, a backhanded slap that had connected wrong. I told her all of it. The staged photos, the folding chair at Thanksgiving, the constant, grinding erosion. I told her about the last night, the closed door, and the bus ride out of Indianapolis. She listened, her face growing hard. When I finished, she did not offer pity. She did not tell me I was brave. She just nodded. Once. "Okay," she said. "So that's why we don't compromise, ever." She understood. The fortress had to be impregnable because the world was full of people like Greg and Marla. The Aurelius Health contract was our Everest. It was an $80 million deal that would take Verveline from a regional success story to a national standard. It was everything we had worked for. It was validation, expansion, and security, all in one. We had spent 6 months in the due diligence process. We had beaten out 3 massive legacy competitors. Our tech was simply better, Our data was cleaner, our proposal was flawless. The final board approval was scheduled for the end of the week. It was supposed to be a formality. Then the email arrived, the grainy photo, the shadow in the doorway. He knew. And with it, the news of my father's appointment to the Aurelius board. My first call was not to a lawyer, it was to Jasper Laird. Jasper is a digital forensics expert. He operates in a legal gray area, a truth consultant, for people who need to verify data that powerful entities would prefer to keep buried. He is the best in Seattle. He is expensive, and he is surgically precise. I met him at a secure data drop, a nondescript server room in the basement of a downtown office tower. I did not give him my name. I gave him a burner laptop with the original image file and a cashier's check for $10,000. "I don't need to know the context," he said, his eyes already scanning the file's metadata. "I just need to know the question." "The question is it real?" I said. "And what else is on the drive it came from?" This camera was part of an old, always-on loop system. The sender gave me one frame. I want to know what happened in the frames before and after. "This camera model, this is old," he mused, tapping at his keyboard. "Volatile memory, small buffer, getting anything more will be delicate. Give me 24 hours. While Jasper worked, the second piece of data landed on my desk. Maya brought it in, her face grim. She had a friend on the administrative staff at Aurelius. "We have a problem," she said, closing my office door. "My contact just sat in on a pre-approval meeting. Your father is our biggest advocate on the board." A cold dread settled in my stomach. "What do you mean, advocate?" "He's pushing for us. Hard. He's apparently been singing Vervline's praises all week, but it's the way he's doing it." She pulled up a transcript of the internal chat logs. Greg called her. "This Vervline team is exactly the kind of agile, innovative partner we should be fostering. It's about more than just numbers. It's about community and trust." Another board member. "Their tech is solid, Greg, but the price point is high." Greg called her. "You cannot put a price on integrity. My family has been involved in charitable health initiatives for years. We believe in lifting up new voices. This is an investment in a better, more transparent future." I read the words again. My family. Charitable. Integrity. He was using us. He was leveraging our clean, hard-won reputation as a prop for his own. He was going to stand on our stage and present our success as an extension of his benevolence, his vision. The $80 million contract was not just a contract, it was a crown. He was anointing himself as the kingmaker, and Marla would be the queen, celebrating their family-first values at the gala. My success would become his narrative. I would be, once again, the convenient child, the unnamed, unseen force that made him look good. "Lena," Maya said, her voice soft but firm. "If he's our champion, he'll guarantee the votes. We win. We get the contract. We can just take the win and never, ever interact with him." "No," I said. The word was flat, final. "We don't win like this. Maya, we don't win because the man who shielded my abuser is using us as a charitable initiative. We win on merit, or we don't win at all. I will not owe him this. I will not have my life's work built on his lie." "So what do? Pull the bid? We'll be blacklisted." "We correct the data," I said. "We introduce a new variable. We let the truth of his integrity be part of the equation." My secure phone buzzed. A text from Jasper Laird. "Done. And you are going to want to see this. The file is audio, not video. Check your encrypted drop." I logged in. There was a single, small audio file. File name, -17 seconds, wave. I put on my headphones and hit play. The file was mostly hiss, the background noise of a quiet house at night, and then a voice. My father's voice. It was not loud. It was a low, slightly irritated murmur. He was on the phone. "No, she's still here," he was saying. "She's arguing with Marla. Of course it's about nothing. It's always about nothing." A pause. The muffled sound of Marla's voice rising in the kitchen. indistinct. I know, I'm handling it. I'll be at the club in 20. Just don't make a big deal out of it when you get here. I don't want this to complicate the weekend. Another pause, then the sound of a door hinge creaking open, the sound of my own voice crying, "Stop!" The audio file ended. I sat there, frozen, the headphones hissing in my ears. The blood in my veins felt like ice. I had spent 5 years processing the trauma of his retreat. I had analyzed it as a moment of profound weakness, of moral cowardice, a snap decision made in fear. This audio file was a data correction. It was not a reflex. It was not a moment of shock. It was a premeditated choice. He was on the phone making plans, annoyed that my complication was interrupting his evening. He knew there was a conflict. He heard the escalation. His only concern was that it not complicate the weekend. He had walked to that door not as a father, but as an annoyed property manager checking on a disturbance. He had opened it, assessed the complication, his wife beating his daughter, and decided that the cost of intervention was too high. It would make noise. It would upset Marla. It would delay his trip to the club. He closed the door. Don't make a big deal out of it. I took off the headphones. My hands were perfectly steady. The last piece of the puzzle had just clicked into place. The photo was the what. The audio was the why. "Maya," I said, my voice dangerously calm, "get me the AV specs for the Aurelius Gala, the one Marla is so excited about." "Lena, what are you doing?" "My father is going to speak at that gala. He is going to talk about his integrity. He is going to use my company, Verveline, as his proof. He is going to stand on a stage and build his reputation on a foundation of silence." I opened a new file on my computer, a project plan. "I am a systems engineer," I said. "I have just identified a critical foundational flaw in his system. I am not going to just patch it. I am going to de-anonymize the data." The plan began to form, clear and cold as code. This would not be a messy, emotional confrontation. It would be a clinical, ethical exposure. I would not use this to destroy them. I would use it to create accountability. I would not let them define my success, and I would not let them hide from their truth. The gala was the perfect venue. The stage was already set. The audience was already assembled. They had built the platform themselves, dedicated to family and integrity. I would simply provide the missing data at the right time, in the right place, and I would do it in a way that did not demean me, or any other victim of their silence. I would not be the girl cowering on the floor. I would be the founder of Verveline Systems, presenting a case study in transparency. The Aurelius Health Family First Gala was the apex of the Seattle philanthropic season. It was held in the grand ballroom of the Four Seasons, a cavernous space of crystal chandeliers and muted gold fabric. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and passively warmed scallops. Hundreds of the city's wealthiest, most powerful people mingled, their voices a civilized hum, their diamonds catching the light. This was their world, a world of soft surfaces, polite applause, and narratives so smooth they were frictionless. And tonight, my family was set to be its star. Marla was scheduled to present the inaugural Family Commitment Award. It was an award, I'd learned, that her own foundation had sponsored a significant portion of. She was, in effect, giving an award to herself. But the plaque would be presented to a carefully selected recipient family to mask the self-congratulation. And the keynote speaker, the final voice of the evening, the man who would tie a bow on the theme of courage and care, was Greg Calder. My entry point was not a ticket, it was a vendor pass. A technical sponsorship, I had proposed to Maya 2 days earlier, in the Verveline conference room. A live demo. Maya had crossed her arms, her face a mask of deep skepticism. A technical sponsorship for a gala, Lena. They are not here to look at supply chain logistics. They are here to drink champagne and bid on ski vacations. They are also here, I countered, keeping my voice level, to be seen supporting Aurelius, Aurelius is about to sign an $80 million contract for a new data infrastructure. They want to look cutting edge. We will offer to run a live, transparent demo on the side screens, a tasteful, silent data visualization showing the flow of critical supplies. We will brand it as Verveline's commitment to transparency. It shows Aurelius is already implementing its new, visionary partnership. It gives them a tech-forward talking point. It also gives you access to their AV infrastructure, she said flatly. She was not asking. It gives us access to the AV room, yes, to ensure our feed is integrated correctly. Lena, she leaned forward, her eyes searching mine. You promised me. You promised we would not become a tool for your revenge. This company is bigger than that. It's my life's work, too. This is not revenge, Maya. This is an ethical intervention, I said, and I believed it. Greg Calder is using our name, our work, to build a public platform of integrity, a platform built on a lie. I am not setting a fire. I am submitting a data correction, publicly. It's the only way to separate Verveline from his narrative. We win or lose on our own merit, not because a board member with a dark secret wants to use us as a philanthropic prop. She stared at me for a long time. I could see the conflict in her, the loyalty to me, and the loyalty to the pristine company we had built. One condition, she said finally. The contract. If this data correction costs us the Aurelius deal, you walk away from this fight. I mean, you let it go. You don't burn the company down trying to prove a point. It won't, I said, because the point isn't about them. It's about us. It's about transparency. She sighed, unconvinced but cornered. Send the proposal. Aurelius accepted within an hour. They loved the idea. It cost them nothing and gave them a veneer of technological sophistication. The next day, I delivered the media file to their AV team. I had spent 12 hours editing it myself. The file I submitted was a 60-second loop, exactly as promised. It was a beautiful, abstract visualization of data nodes, glowing blue and green lights traveling across a map, representing our logistics at work. Overlaid was simple text. Verveline systems, integrity in motion. Data you can trust. Moments of choice, moments of clarity. It was corporate, inspirational, and utterly harmless. The AV tech, a young guy overwhelmed by the scale of the event, barely glanced at it. He loaded it onto the main server. Looks great, he said, checking the thumbnail. We'll run this on the side screens during the cocktail hour and loop it silently during the speeches. Perfect, I said. I'll just need to check the integration from the control booth before the program starts. I had my access. The rest was Jasper. He had taken my raw files, the grainy kitchen image, the 17 seconds of audio. He had embedded them inside the harmless corporate video file. It was a digital Trojan horse. The inspirational loop was the outer shell. The truth was the payload, dormant, waiting for a single audio trigger. Jasper was a genius. He had networked into the gala's audio feed remotely. The system would not respond to a button. It would not respond to a human cue. It would respond only to the specific waveform of my father's voice saying a specific phrase. A phrase Jasper and I had spent an hour isolating from Greg's past public interviews. A phrase he used constantly when he was congratulating himself. We showed up. The night of the gala. The tension was a wire pulled tight in my chest. I sat in the back of the AV booth, a headset on, pretending to monitor our data feed. From my elevated position, I could see the entire room. I watched Marla work the floor. She was wearing a blinding crimson dress, laughing too loudly, her hand gripping Greg's arm. She was the queen of the evening. Savannah was trailing her, phone in hand, live streaming her every move. Backstage with the mother of the year, she narrated to her followers. Mom is literally the icon of family commitment. So blessed. I saw them take their seats at the head table, table 1, directly in front of the stage. Then I saw her, Aunt Becca. She was standing hesitantly by the entrance, clutching the VIP ticket I had messengered to her that morning. Aunt Becca was my mother's sister. She was a quiet woman, a librarian from Indianapolis who had lived in the shadow of Greg's success and Marla's aggression. She was the one who had seen the bruises I tried to cover. She was the one who, when I called her from a bus station at 18 with $30 to my name, had wired me $500 without asking a single question, except, "Are you safe?" I had sent the ticket with a simple note. "If you ever wondered what happened after I left, be at this address tonight. I am safe, and I am no longer quiet." I watched as an usher, seeing her VIP pass, led her to a prime table near the front. She looked terrified and out of place, a small gray bird in a flock of peacocks. Our eyes met across the ballroom. I gave her a single, small nod. She sat down, her hands clenched in her lap. The program began. The CEO of Aurelius spoke, the mayor spoke, the lights dimmed. Marla ascended the stage to present her award, her voice dripping with practiced sincerity as she spoke of the bonds that hold us together. I kept my eyes on the main feed. My heart was a cold, steady engine. Then, the CEO returned to the podium. And now, it is my distinct privilege to introduce our keynote speaker, a new and valued member of our board, a leader in our community, and a man who exemplifies this evening's theme of courage and care. Please welcome Mr. Greg Calder. The room erupted in applause. The spotlight found him. He stood up, buttoned his tuxedo jacket, and flashed his perfect practice smile at Marla. He kissed her. The cameras flashed. Savannah's phone was held high, capturing the perfect family moment. He walked onto the stage, radiating confidence. He adjusted the microphone. He looked out at the sea of adoring faces, at the full room, at the cameras broadcasting the event live to every employee in the Aurelius network. Every single person in that room was ready to believe him. They were eager to be told a convenient, comfortable truth. He placed his note cards on the lectern. "Thank you," he began, his voice rich and resonant. "Thank you. What a wonderful evening. When we talk about courage and care, we talk about commitment. We talk about integrity. We talk about what it means to be there when it matters most." I put my finger on the primary feed switch. My screen showed the harmless Verveline logo, spinning slowly. "My family," he continued, gesturing to table 1, "has always believed in that principle. It is not about the grand gestures. It is about the quiet, consistent act of being present. When the community called, when our hospitals needed us, when the moment of choice arrived, we showed up." His voice, amplified by the state-of-the-art sound system, washed over the ballroom. We showed up. In the AV booth, a small red light on my console turned green. The trigger was latched. Jasper's embedded script was executing. My hand was already on the main feed switcher. The AV tech beside me was looking down at his phone. Bored. I pressed the override, killing the harmless corporate loop on the main screens. For exactly 1 second, the 3 massive screens above the stage went black. A few people in the audience coughed. Someone shifted in their chair. My father, Greg, paused, momentarily thrown by the technical glitch. He looked up at the blank center screen, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. "It seems we—" He never finished the sentence. The screen flickered, not to the Aurelius logo, but to a grainy, starkly lit image, the high-angle view of the Indianapolis kitchen. The room's collective intake of breath was sharp, a sudden vacuum. The timestamp was visible in the bottom corner, October 18th, 5 years ago, the time, 22:17, and 4 seconds. The audio did not fade in, it punched in. The first sound was a thud, the sound of the wooden roller hitting my shoulder, and my own sharp cry of pain. Then, Marla's voice, not the honeyed, philanthropic tone from the stage, but a low, guttural snarl. "You are an inconvenience, a parasite." I saw Savannah's phone, the one she'd been live streaming with, waver and dip. I saw Aunt Becca's hands fly to her mouth, her eyes wide with a terrible, dawning recognition. On the screen, my younger self scrambled backward, hands raised. "Stop! Marla, please stop!" Marla raised the roller again. And then, the sound of the hinge, the creak of the door. The ballroom was so quiet, I could hear the hum of the servers in the booth. Every eye, hundreds of them, was locked on the screen, watching the sliver of hallway light cut into the kitchen. My father's silhouette appeared, tall, broad, unmistakable. He stood there, 1 second, 2 seconds. He saw his wife, arm raised. He saw me, cowering. The entire gala, the entire Aurelius Health Network, saw him see me. Then, the shadow pulled back. The door slid closed. The latch clicked, a sound that seemed to echo through the ballroom like a gunshot. The video froze on the closed door. The silence in the room was absolute. A heavy, suffocating blanket. It was the silence of complicity, the silence he had chosen, now magnified 1,000 times. Greg stood at the podium, frozen. His smile was gone, a rictus of confusion. He looked at the screen, at the door, and then at Marla. Before he could speak, before anyone could process, the second file executed. The screen flashed, 17 seconds earlier. The audio played first, hissing, and then his voice, my father's voice, low and irritated, from his phone call. "No, she's still here. She's arguing with Marla. Of course it's about nothing. It's always about nothing." A murmur swept the room, a wave of shock. I know. I'm handling it. I'll be at the club in 20. Just don't make a big deal out of it when you get here. I don't want this to complicate the weekend." The sound of the hinge creaking open. My voice. "Stop!" The screen went black again, but the audio of his words hung in the air, an indictment that needed no video. The silence that followed was different. It was cold. It was judgmental. Greg's face was chalk white. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Marla was the first to move. She shot to her feet, knocking her chair over. The crash was deafening. "That is a lie!" she screamed, her voice breaking, the practiced elegance gone. "That is a fake! That is not real! It's fabricated! It's a deep fake!" She was pointing, not at the screen, but at the AV booth, at me. But Jasper was ready. As Marla shouted, "Fake!" the center screen flashed to life again. It split into 2 panels. On the left, the frozen image of Greg's shadow in the doorway. On the right, a black screen filled with scrolling white text. It was not a video, it was a forensic report. File integrity, verified source hash, SHA-256, 00X, A9B, metadata signature, match camera model, C-Link Vigilant 3, manufactured discontinued. 2018, file creation, date, OCT 18-2019, 22-1704 PST5. Audio signature, synced at a 17.2s. Pre-roll buffer, no evidence of post-production, no compression artifacts, no AI generation signatures. It was Jasper's unassailable, clinical breakdown. It was pure, cold data. It was the truth, digitally fingerprinted. Marla stared at the screen, her mouth open. The words, discontinued 2018 and no AI generation, seemed to pulse. Her accusation of fake had been disproven, in real time, in front of everyone. Her panic was visible. The event coordinator, a man in a headset, was scrambling toward the stage, his face pale. "Shut it off! Shut it off!" But I had the feed. I let the forensic report hold for 5 more seconds. 5 seconds for every year I had been silent. Then I cut the feed myself. The screens went dark. The house lights came up, but they felt harsh, interrogative. The room was a sea of stunned, horrified faces. The polite hum of the gala was gone. This was no longer a party. It was a crime scene. I looked down from the booth. My father had not moved. He was gripping the sides of the lucite podium, his knuckles white. He was staring at the blank screen, his chest heaving. His practiced speech about courage and integrity was in pieces at his feet. His note cards, written by Marla's PR team, were now just paper. For the first time in his life, Greg Calder was not in control of the narrative. He was not the visionary board member, the charitable patriarch, the man who showed up. He was the shadow in the doorway. He was the voice on the phone, annoyed about his weekend plans. The story he had spent a lifetime carefully curating, a story built on the foundation of my silence and convenience, had just been publicly, forensically, and irreversibly debugged. He had lost possession of his own life story, and in the dead, awful silence of that ballroom, he had absolutely no idea what to say. I pulled off the headset, the sudden silence of the booth ringing in my ears. The AV tech next to me was staring, his mouth open, at the scene below. The ballroom was in chaos. People were standing, whispering, their faces a mix of horror and morbid fascination. The event coordinator was on his radio, his voice a high-pitched squeak. I slipped out of the booth and headed for the backstage door. My legs were steady. My hands were not shaking. I felt a cold, clean sense of finality. The data had been presented. The system was now reacting to the new input. Maya met me in the concrete hallway behind the stage. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and terror. "Lena," she whispered, grabbing my arm. Her grip was tight. "My God, are we going too far? This is scorched earth." I looked her directly in the eye, needing her to understand. No, scorched earth would have been looping the video. Scorched earth would have been showing the other clips, the ones with the ring, the ones where she threw a plate. I didn't. I showed exactly one thing, the moment of his choice. This was never about humiliating her, Maya. It was about holding him accountable. The theme of his speech was courage and care. The point was to show what happens when that courage fails. The goal is accountability, not annihilation. She searched my face, seeing not a woman undone by rage, but a systems analyst who had just run a critical diagnostic. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice still trembling. "They'll sue us. They'll sue Verveline. We'll lose the contract. We'll lose everything." "They won't sue," I said with certainty, "because a lawsuit means discovery. It means putting Marla on the stand. It means subpoenaing the full, unedited security footage. They will not risk that, and we won't lose the contract if we control the narrative that follows." From the ballroom, we could hear the event MC tap the microphone, his voice nervous. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, if I could have your attention. We seem to have experienced a highly unusual a presentation." He was floundering. The script was gone. "This is the moment," I said to Maya. "They've all just been shown a catastrophic failure of integrity, and they are all wondering what it has to do with Aurelius and Vervelin." I pulled a single, folded piece of paper from my jacket pocket. It was not a speech. It was a list. "I'm not hiding. Maya, I'm not an anonymous hacker. I'm Lena Calder, co-founder of Verveline, and I'm going to walk out there and attach my name to the data I just presented." "Lena, don't," she pleaded. "Let the bomb go off. We can walk away. We can just leave." "No. If I leave, I'm just a disgruntled daughter. Like Marla said, I'm a liar, trying to sabotage a contract. But if I walk out there, I'm the CEO of the company they are about to partner with, demanding a new standard of transparency. They've been listening to him talk about integrity. Now I'm going to give them a practical application." The MC's voice grew desperate. "At this time, given the subject of transparency raised by this video, I'd like to invite the representative from Verveline Systems to perhaps clarify their presentation." He had no idea what he was saying. He was just looking for an adult to take control of the room. "That's my cue," I said. I smoothed my jacket. I unfolded the paper. I walked out of the darkness of the wings and into the harsh, bright spotlight on the stage. The murmuring stopped instantly. I walked directly to the podium my father had just abandoned. He was still standing near the steps, looking lost, his face ashen. As Marla and an event security guard tried to speak to him, he looked up as I approached the podium, and his eyes, it was not hatred I saw. It was a deep, bottomless confusion. the look of a man whose entire operating system had just crashed. I adjusted the microphone. I looked out at the room. I saw the board members of Aurelius Health in the front rows. I saw their wives and husbands. I saw my Aunt Becca, who was weeping silently into her hands. "My name is Lena Calder," I said. My voice was amplified, clear and steady. It did not shake. "I am the co-founder and chief architect of Verveline Systems." I heard a collective gasp. I was no longer an abstract victim on a screen. I was the woman they had been negotiating with for 6 months. I was the face of the $80 million contract. "What you just saw was not a prank," I continued. "It was not a stunt, and it was not a deep fake. It was a data correction. It was a piece of verifiable forensic-grade truth from my own history." I looked directly at the front table, at the CEO of Aurelius. Verveline Systems was founded on the principle of absolute transparency. We believe that you cannot fix a broken system until you are willing to see, clearly and honestly, exactly where it is broken. We apply that to biomedical supply chains, and I apply it to my own life. I paused, letting the words sink in. The room was utterly still. "My company is in consideration for a partnership with Aurelius Health, a network dedicated to courage and care. The man who just spoke, Greg Calder, is my father. The woman in the video, Marla Pierce, is his wife. For 5 years, they have built a public-facing brand of family integrity on a private foundation of violence and complicity. My father's silence, his choice to see and to turn away, was the mechanism that allowed that violence to flourish." I saw Marla lunge toward the stage, but 2 security guards gently, firmly, blocked her path. She was spitting, her face crimson. "She's lying. She's doing this to get the contract. It's blackmail." I did not raise my voice. I did not look at her. I kept my eyes on the board. "I am not here to ask you to fire him," I said. "I am not here to demand money. I am not here to make myself a professional victim. I am here to do what my father failed to do, to show up and attach my name to the truth, no matter how complicated it is." I held up the piece of paper. "This is not a lawsuit. It is a boundary statement. These are the terms for any future contact. These are the terms for what accountability looks like." I read them, one by one. A complete public and private acknowledgement of the facts as presented. No more lies, no more spin. 2. A public apology, distributed on the same platforms they have used to promote their perfect family narrative. The apology must be commensurate with the scale of the public deception. 3. A substantial, unconditional, and anonymous donation to the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. The amount is their choice, but it should reflect the price of silence. And 4. They will cease all attempts to infiltrate my personal or professional life. No more proud family posts. No more using my company's success to burnish their reputation. My life and my work are my own. I finished reading and folded the paper. "These are my terms," I said. "This is what transparency looks like. Verveline Systems stands by its data. The question for the Aurelius board is, do you?" I turned from the podium. As I did, the CEO of Aurelius stood up. He was a tall man, with a grim, serious face. He looked past me, at my father, who was still standing by the stage, a ghost in a tuxedo. "Mr. Calder," the CEO said, his voice cold. "Given the information that has been presented, Aurelius Health is immediately pausing all consideration of the Pierce-Calder family honor. We will be conducting a full and immediate review of our ethical guidelines and our board appointments. This gala is over." He dropped his microphone onto the table with a thud. It was done. The system had broken. Marla was shrieking, but the sound was distant. I walked off the stage, past my father. I did not look at him. I walked past the shocked faces, past the whispers. I saw Maya by the exit, her car keys in her hand. I had not come here tonight as a victim. I had come as an auditor, and the audit was complete. The explosion was not immediate. For the first 12 hours, there was only a stunned, echoing silence. The live stream had been cut. The gala abruptly terminated. The 200 guests who had witnessed it live fanned out into the Seattle night, carrying the story. By morning, Aurelius' gala was trending. Then, Marla's counteroffensive began. It was not a direct denial. Jasper's forensic report had made that impossible. It was a classic misdirection, a narrative pivot, executed by a high-priced crisis PR firm that must have cost a fortune. By noon on day one, articles began appearing on syndicated blogs and entertainment news sites. The story was, "Tragic family dispute spills into public, orchestrated by unstable daughter." I was painted as a troubled and opportunistic woman, lashing out after being cut off from the family's wealth. The articles, all quoting an anonymous source close to the family, claimed I had a history of dramatic attention-seeking behavior. They spun the $80 million Vervling contract as the motive. I was not a victim seeking accountability. I was a failed extortionist, a vindictive daughter, using spliced and misleading footage to destroy her father's reputation and force a contract through. It was a good story. It was simple. It was ugly. And it was believable to anyone who wanted a convenient villain. Greg, true to form, said nothing. He vanished. His phone went straight to voicemail. His email bounced. He issued no statement defending his wife. He issued no statement apologizing. He simply ceased to exist, letting Marla's PR machine fill the vacuum he had created. He had closed the door again, this time on the entire public. Savannah, predictably, tried to help. She posted a tearful video to her Instagram, a montage of heavily filtered photos of her and Marla laughing, set to a saccharine acoustic song. "My mother is the kindest, most perfect person I know." She wept into her phone's camera. "I don't know what kind of monster would fabricate such horrible lies to hurt her. She has only ever been loving." It was a strategic error. The internet, now armed with the date from the video, immediately cross-referenced her timeline. Commenters pointed out that half the photos in her loving montage were geotagged in the Hamptons during the exact week she claimed Marla was a perfect mother back in Indianapolis. The public comments section turned into a brutal, real-time fact-check. Her video was ratioed into oblivion, becoming a case study in failed damage control. This was their strategy: flood the zone with emotional noise, character assassination, and convenient lies. Our response was surgical. It was not emotional. It was a wall of evidence. We did not engage with the PR firms. We did not give interviews. Instead, data points began to appear, one by one, from different, credible sources. First, Jasper. He anonymously released his full, unredacted forensic report to a consortium of tech journalists and digital forensics blogs. He did not provide the video file itself. I would not allow the trauma to be endlessly replayed, but he provided the digital fingerprint. He explained, in dry technical detail, why the file was unfakeable. He focused on the camera's obsolete firmware. "To deepfake this," he wrote, "one would not only need to be a world-class visual effects artist, but also a digital archaeologist capable of spoofing a hardware signature from a camera model that has not been in production for nearly a decade." The deepfake narrative died within an hour. Second, Aunt Becca. She read the articles painting me as a vindictive and money-hungry liar, and she got angry. She contacted the legal team I had retained, a quiet, powerful firm specializing in slander, and gave them a piece of evidence. It was a letter, a real, physical letter, in my own handwriting, mailed to her 5 years ago, less than a week after I had arrived in Seattle. Our lawyers released a single, notarized photograph of one paragraph from that letter. The date was clearly visible. My handwriting was young, shaken. It did not mention the wooden roller. I had been too ashamed. But it said, "I had to leave. I couldn't stay there. Marla, she pushes me. She slaps me when she's been drinking. And he doesn't see it. He won't see it. I am not safe there." This single paragraph eviscerated their one-time misunderstanding narrative. It proved a documented history of violence. Third, a former neighbor from Indianapolis, a retired police detective, it turned out. He had seen the news. He contacted our lawyers. He provided his own notes from a call he had made years prior, a wellness check after hearing a violent argument. The police who responded had logged it as a domestic dispute, verbal, adults only. The notes specified no children present at time of dispute. This was critical. It established a pattern of adult-on-adult aggression, not parental discipline, and it placed Marla firmly in the room as an aggressor. Even then, the wall was built. Their narrative of a lying daughter now had to contend with a discontinued camera, a time-stamped letter, and a police call. With the evidence public, my legal team made its move. They did not file a lawsuit. They delivered a cease and desist letter to Marla, her PR firm, and every outlet that had run the anonymous source story. The letter was a masterpiece of legal precision. It did not demand a single dollar in damages. It demanded an immediate, public retraction of all slanderous statements and the removal of the articles. It pointed to the forensic report and the notarized letter as proof of actual malice. We were not the party asking for money. We were the party demanding the truth. The pressure now swung, hard, onto Aurelius Health. Their phones were ringing off the hook. Their social media was a dumpster fire. They were a healthcare network, and their newest board member had been forensically proven to be complicit in domestic violence. Their theme was courage and care. The hypocrisy was radioactive. They had no choice. They released a formal statement. They announced they were convening an emergency internal ethics hearing. The purpose was to review the conduct of Mr. Greg Calder and to assess the nature of the information brought to light at the Family First Gala. And then, the crucial line, we have extended an invitation to Ms. Lina Calder, as CEO of Verveline Systems, to provide a formal statement to the committee. They had invited me in. This, however, was where Maya drew the line. She walked into my office, her face set. "You've done it, Lina," she said. "You have them. They're cornered. Now, it's my turn." "What do you mean?" "You are going to that hearing as Lina Calder, the victim and the witness," she said. "I am going as Verveline Systems." She handed me a copy of a letter she had just sent to the Aurelius board. It was a formal addendum to our contract bid. "To the board of Aurelius Health," she had written. "Verveline Systems demands that the technical and compliance review of our bid be conducted entirely separately from the ethics hearing concerning Mr. Calder. Our platform's efficacy, our data integrity, and our price point are not matters of emotion or family history. They are matters of empirical fact. We expect to be judged on our code, and our code alone. Any attempt to link the approval of this contract to the personal testimony of my co-founder will be considered an act of bad faith negotiation." It was a brilliant, cold-blooded move. She was severing the two. She was telling them, you have to deal with Lina's truth, but you also have to deal with Verveline's product. You cannot use one to escape the other. You cannot deny our superior tech just because my partner's family is a mess, and you cannot placate my partner by giving her the contract, either. The public conversation shifted overnight. The bloggers and the news anchors stopped debating who was right. The data was too clear. The question was no longer, what happened? The new question, the one echoing across the city, was, what happens now? Who, in this web of power, money, and trauma, actually had the courage to fix it? The narrative had moved past their lies and was now focused, squarely, on the one person who had yet to say a single word. My father. He reached out 2 days before the Aurelius hearing. The message came not from his phone, which was still dark, but from a new, anonymous email address sent to my corporate account. The message was 3 lines. I need to see you, alone, Hotel Intercontinental, 4th floor, Cascade Ballroom B, tomorrow at 10, please. It was the please that struck me. I had never, in my entire life, heard him use that word with me. I did not reply, but at 10 a.m. the next day, I was there. The Cascade Ballroom B was not a ballroom. It was a sterile, gray conference room. smelling of industrial carpet cleaner and stale air. The vast mahogany table was set for 20, but there were only 2 chairs, placed opposite each other at one end, as if for a hostile negotiation. He was already there, standing by the window, looking out at the gray Seattle rain. He had aged a decade in the last 5 days. His suit, usually impeccable, looked slept in. He turned as I entered. He was holding a white paper cup of coffee, black, no sugar, his old habit. "Lena," he said. His voice was raw. I did not sit. I stood by the door, leaving my escape route open. "Greg." Using his name felt like pulling a pin from a grenade. His face flinched, but he nodded, accepting it. "Thank you for coming," he said. I wanted to say, I am so sorry." I waited. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the hiss of the ventilation. "Sorry for what, specifically?" I asked. My voice was flat, clinical. This was not a daughter. This was an auditor. "For all of it," he said, gesturing vaguely. "For the complication. For how all of this has gotten so out of hand. I never intended." He was avoiding the words. He was apologizing for the consequences, not the act. "You're sorry it got out of hand?" I asked. "Or you're sorry it happened?" "I'm sorry," he repeated, his voice cracking. "I'm sorry for the pain it's caused you." It was another deflection. The pain it caused. As if the pain was a weather event. As if it had not been inflicted by a person and enabled by another. I walked to the table. I unzipped my portfolio. I took out 2 items. The first was a high-resolution, 8x10 photograph. The grainy shot from the kitchen, his shadow in the doorway. I placed it in the center of the table, directly in his line of sight. The second was a single sheet of paper. I placed it beside the photo. It was the transcript. Greg called her, via phone. "No, she's still here. She's arguing with Marla. Of course it's about nothing." Greg called her. "I don't want this to complicate the weekend." Sound of door hinge. Sound of Lena's voice. "Stop." Sound of door hinge closing. He stared at the 2 items, the photo of his action, and the transcript of his motive, the evidence. He finally sat down, his movements heavy, like a man moving underwater. He looked at the transcript for a long, long time. "I didn't know there was audio," he whispered. "That's the only part you didn't know," I said. "The rest, you lived." He looked up, and for the first time, the mask of the visionary board member was gone. He was just a hollowed-out, terrified man. "I was afraid," he said, the admission so quiet I barely heard it. "Afraid of what? She was attacking me. I was your daughter." "I was afraid," he said again, louder. "Of the trouble." "The trouble." I let the word hang in the air. "The complication, the weekend, the inconvenience of a scene. That was the trouble you were afraid of." "Yes," he said. It was a confession. "Marla. She was fragile, volatile. Any confrontation, it would have exploded. It would have been a mess. I thought if I just walked away, it would de-escalate. I thought she would stop if I wasn't there to watch." "She did stop," I said. "After you closed the door, you didn't de-escalate anything. You endorsed it. You gave her permission." "No," he said, slamming his fist on the table. The coffee cup jumped, spilling a black ring on the mahogany. "That is not true. It wasn't the right time." "It wasn't the right time," I repeated, my voice devoid of emotion. "You were on your way to the club. Your weekend was about to be complicated, so you closed the door." He buried his face in his hands. "You don't understand," he mumbled from behind his fingers. "My life, my work, the reputation I built, it all depends on stability, on peace. I have to manage. I have to manage the variables. Marla, my position, the board. It's all a structure. You were an unmanaged variable." An unmanaged variable, not a daughter, a data point that was causing a system error. So you deleted the variable, I said. You closed the door. You left me in the corrupted file and walked away. He looked up, his eyes red. What do you want from me, Lena? He pleaded. You've won. You have the video. You have the audio. You've ruined me. Marla. Marla is gone. She took Savannah, and she's staying with her sister. She says I'm a coward who betrayed her. The Aurelius board. They're going to vote to remove me. My career is over. What more do you want? Do you want me to beg? I'm begging. I am sorry. I am so sorry. It was a performance, a final, desperate one. He was still apologizing for his ruin, not for his choice. He was still the victim. I stood up. I had my answer. He was incapable of telling the truth. He was only capable of managing the fallout. I asked you a question in that kitchen 5 years ago, with my eyes, I said. I'll ask it again, with my words. When you stood in that doorway, and you saw your wife with a weapon and your daughter on the floor, who did you choose? He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing. He had no answer. He just couldn't say it. He couldn't admit that he had chosen himself. He couldn't admit that he had chosen the convenience of his life over the safety of mine. That's all I needed to know, I said, zipping my portfolio. Lena, wait, he cried, standing up. What are you going to do? Me? I am going to the Aurelius hearing. I am going to sit in the chair they provide, and I'm going to answer their questions, truthfully. And the audio? He whispered, his eyes on the transcript. Are you going to play that? I paused at the door. That depends on you. Greg, you're invited to the hearing, too. You can tell them what you just told me. You can tell them about the trouble, about the complication. You can tell them your truth, in your own words. Or, I can tell mine, with my evidence. You're giving me a choice? He asked, a flicker of his old negotiator's mind returning. I'm a data engineer, I said. I've always believed in letting people make their own choices, as long as they are fully informed of the variables. You now have all the variables. You know what I have. You know what is at stake. You can speak, or the recording will speak for you. What do you want? He asked again, his voice desperate. Just tell me what you want me to say. I want the right sentence, I said. Said to the right people, you'll know what it is. I left him standing in the middle of that vast, empty room, next to his spilled coffee and the 2 pieces of paper that had dismantled his life. I walked down the hall to the elevator. As the doors opened, I looked back. He had come out of the conference room. He was standing in the hallway, his shoulders slumped. He pulled his phone from his pocket. I watched him dial. I stepped into the elevator. Just before the doors closed, I saw him put the phone to his ear. He was calling Marla. I pressed the button for the lobby. I imagined the call. Her, screaming at him, calling him weak, a traitor. Him, finally, just listening. A friend of mine who works in the hotel's network operations told me later that the call log for that room showed a 2-minute connection, and in that 2-minute connection, the phone's microphone had registered only one sound from his end, the sound of him breathing. He had held the phone to his ear, listened to her rage, and for 2 full minutes, he had said absolutely nothing. Then, he hung up. The Aurelius ethics hearing was not held in a courtroom, but it had all the theatrical, oppressive weight of one. We were in the main corporate boardroom on the 50th floor, a cold, glass and steel cylinder overlooking the Seattle fog. The arrangement was not a panel facing an audience. It was a massive circular table of polished dark wood, designed to imply a lack of hierarchy, a round table of equals. It felt, instead, like an arena. The board members, the CEO, Philip Strauss, the general counsel, and 5 others were present. The internal live stream was active, a small red light glowing on the ceiling camera, broadcasting this proceeding to every employee in the Aurelius network. Maya was there, seated at a small side table, ostensibly to answer technical questions about the Verve-Line bid. She looked rigid with tension. And then there were us, the family. Marla was seated at the far end of the circle, flanked by a man in a $3,000 suit who was clearly her lawyer. Greg was seated 2 chairs down from her, alone. I was directly opposite them, with my own legal counsel. In the precise geometric center of the circle, I had made one request: a single, empty chair. It was a standard black office chair, identical to our own, but the spotlights in the center of the ceiling were focused on it, making it the brightest object in the room. It was a void, a question. It was the physical representation of the choice to not show up. Strauss, the CEO, called the hearing to order. His voice was cold, devoid of the forced warmth from the gala. This committee is convened to review the events of the Family First Gala and to assess the board-level conduct of Mr. Greg Calder, as well as the related bid from Verve-Line Systems. We will hear from all parties. Mrs. Pierce, your counsel has indicated you wish to speak first. Marla's lawyer stood. Thank you. Mr. Strauss, my client, Marla Pierce, has been the victim of a malicious, calculated, and technologically fabricated attack. Marla herself then spoke, her voice practiced, trembling just enough. What you saw, she said, looking at the board members, was a lie, a cruel misunderstanding, a moment from 5 years ago, a family argument that was spliced and distorted. That was not what happened. My stepdaughter, Lena, she has had a history of dramatic episodes. We have been trying to get her help for years. This was blackmail. She was trying to force the contract. It was the PR script, delivered with theatrical tears. Strauss listened, his face impassive. Thank you, Mrs. Pierce. You have used the words fabricated, spliced, and distorted. We will address that claim now. He nodded to a large screen on the wall. We have retained our own independent digital forensics experts who have analyzed the complete, unedited file provided by Ms. Calder's own expert, Mr. Jasper Laird. Mr. Laird, you are on the line. Jasper's face appeared, patched in via a secure video link. He looked, as always, bored and precise. He did not say hello. The file is authentic, he stated. The screen beside his face lit up, not with the video, but with lines of code and data strings. My report, which the board has, details 7 layers of verification. I will summarize. 1. The file hash. The SHA-256 signature is intact and matches the file's creation stamp. Not one bit has been altered since it was written by the camera. He continued. 2. The metadata. The camera was a C-Link Vigilant 3, manufacturer discontinued in 2018. Its firmware has a known, unspoofable signature. This file has it. 3. Chain of custody. The file was pulled from the original, volatile memory buffer, which I have also provided. Marla's lawyer interrupted. This is just technical jargon. Jasper did not pause. 4. The audio, the 17-second pre-roll, is not an edit. It is a standard function of this specific model's motion detection buffer. The audio is continuous and verifiably part of the same data block as the video. He went on, detailing the lack of AI artifacts, the consistency of the file compression, the timestamp's perfect synchronization with known server logs from the home's old network. He finished, the file is not a misunderstanding. It is not doctored. It is a 100% verifiable and accurate recording of what happened. Any claim to the contrary is false. Jasper's face vanished. The screen went blank. Marla's lawyer was shuffling his papers, his primary defense now ashes. Strauss's gaze moved to me. Ms. Calder? I stood. I did not look at Marla or Greg. I addressed the board. Thank you. Mr. Strauss, members of the committee, I am here in 2 capacities. First, as the co-founder of Verve-Line Systems. I nodded to Maya, who was watching me, her expression unreadable. My partner, Ms. Rutledge, is here to address any questions about our technical bid. That bid is not part of this discussion. It is empirical. It stands on its own merit, and we expect it to be judged as such. I then pointed to the empty chair in the center of the room. My second capacity is as the person who presented the data at your gala. I did not do it for money. I did not do it to get my father fired, or to see my stepmother humiliated. My boundary statement stands, but my goal here is not to see them lose their livelihoods. This clearly confused them. I am here, I continued, because your industry, the healthcare industry, holds life and death in its hands every day. Your gala's theme was Courage and Care. My father's speech was titled, We Showed Up. I need this board, and all the employees of Aurelius watching this, to understand what showing up truly is. It is not a marketing slogan. It is not a charitable donation. It is a choice. It is the moment you see something wrong, and you choose to act. It is the moment you choose integrity, especially when it is inconvenient, especially when it might come complicate the weekend. I let the words land. Aurelius Health is about to stake its reputation on a contract for transparency and integrity. My only question for this board is, what is your official policy on closing the door? I sat down. The silence in the room was absolute. Strauss let my question hang in the air for a full minute, a tangible thing. He then turned, his face unreadable, to my father. Mr. Calder, you have heard the forensic analysis. You have heard your daughter's statement. The floor is yours. Greg did not move. He was staring at the empty chair in the middle of the room. Marla was glaring at him, a look of pure, venomous warning. He had a piece of paper in front of him, a prepared statement, no doubt written by Marla's lawyer. He pushed his chair back. The sound of it scraping the floor was deafening. He stood up, but he did not take his papers. He walked, his steps heavy, not to the podium, but toward the center of the circle. He stopped directly beside the empty chair, standing in the harsh spotlight. He was a man in a cage. He looked at the chair, then at the board, then at me. His hands, empty at his sides, were clenched so tightly his knuckles were white. He opened his mouth. A dry, rasping sound came out. He closed it. He was trapped, caught between his wife's categorical denial and the absolute, verified truth. A buzzing sound. On the table in front of his seat, his phone lit up. A text message. Marla. She was holding her own phone under the table, staring at him. He looked at his screen. He saw the message. He looked at his wife. He turned his back to her. He slowly reached into his pocket, took out his phone, and with a deliberate, final click, he turned the screen off and put it back in his pocket. He faced the board. He looked at Philip Strauss. His voice was a wreck. He stopped. He swallowed. He tried again. What? The air was sucked from the room. I felt Maya grab the edge of her table. It was the first time he had ever said it out loud. Greg's face, which had been pale, seemed to crumble. He was no longer a board member. He was no longer a husband. He was just the man in the doorway. He took a ragged, terrible breath. His eyes found mine. I backed out, he said, the words tearing out of him. I saw it. I backed out. I failed her. Greg! Marla's shriek was primal. She slammed her hands on the table, scattering her papers. You weak, spineless. Her lawyer shot to his feet. Objection. This is a coerced testimony. My client is being slandered by her own husband under duress. This entire hearing is a procedural sham. But no one was listening. Strauss did not even look at the lawyer. His eyes were locked on Greg, who was still standing by the chair, a man who had just set himself on fire. Mr. Calder, Strauss said, his voice quiet but cutting through the chaos. Please continue. Greg's confession hung in the sterile air, a blast wave that had silenced Marla's lawyer and the entire room. He was still standing by the empty chair, a man who had just dismantled his own carefully constructed reality. Marla was white-lipped, her eyes flashing between her lawyer and her husband, as if searching for a script, a prompt, a way to reboot the system that had just crashed. Her lawyer, regaining his composure, sputtered, "Mr. Strauss, I must again insist. My client's husband is clearly under emotional distress. This is a compromised testimony." Strauss, the CEO, held up a single, sharp hand. He did not even look at the lawyer. His gaze was fixed on Greg. "Mr. Calder, you were saying." Greg took a deep, shuddering breath. The confession seemed to have broken something in him, but also to have set him free. He was no longer trying to manage the variables. He was just a man in a spotlight. He turned away from me, away from the chair, and faced the board. "Mr. Strauss, members of the committee," he said, his voice raw but, for the first time, firm. My failure, what I did, and what I failed to do, is a matter of personal record. It is not something that can be explained by distress. It was a choice, my choice." He paused, and I saw his hand clench. Such a failure of courage has no place on a board dedicated to health and care. It has no place in this company. He looked directly at Strauss. "Effective immediately. I tender my resignation from the Aurelius Health Board of Directors." A quiet gasp went through the room. Marla made a sound, a short, strangled cry. He had done it before they could fire him. He had taken the last shred of power he had and used it. "Furthermore," Greg continued, not stopping, "my actions, my inaction, have caused demonstrable harm. While I cannot undo that, I can attempt to address the consequences. I will be establishing a private, anonymous fund to be managed by a third party with a personal endowment of $2 million for the Washington State Coalition Against Domestic Violence. This is not a donation. This is a reparation. It will not carry my name or the Calder name. It is to be used for those who, unlike my daughter, did not have the resources to build their own way out." He had done it. The room was silent, processing the resignation and the money. He had just publicly, calmly, and procedurally executed his own career. Then, he did the hardest part. He turned and faced me. The entire room, the camera, the board members, all faded away. It was just the two of us. "Lena," he said, and my name was a wound in his mouth. "I know that this does not fix anything. It does not change what I did. It does not erase the silence." He took a step toward me, but stopped. "I know you did not ask for this, but if you require it, I will go public. I will hold a press conference. I will say everything I said in this room, and I will add the details that this committee does not need to hear. I will do it. Not so you will forgive me. I know that is not on the table. But, as you said, the data must be correct. The public record is wrong, and I am the only one who can correct it." He was offering me his total annihilation. He was handing me the sword and baring his neck. The old Greg would have done it for show, for martyrdom. The new, broken Greg seemed to be doing it simply because it was the next logical step in this new, terrible equation he was living in. I looked at him. I felt no impulse to hug him. I felt no rush of forgiveness. I felt only the cold, clear resolution of a system finally running a correct diagnostic. He was still asking me for direction. He was still asking me what to do. "That is not my decision, Greg," I said, my voice as steady as his had been. "That is yours. My terms were in the boundary statement. What you do with your own public life is your own affair." I paused, and I offered him the only thing I had. Not forgiveness, a technical instruction. "But if you do choose to speak," I said, "my only advice is this: be accurate, be complete, and do not, under any circumstances, speak for me. You can only speak for yourself and for your own choices." He nodded, absorbing the terms. "Accurate, complete, not for you." He repeated it like a mantra. "Thank you." I did not say "you're welcome." I just nodded. The transaction was complete. Strauss, the CEO, cleared his throat, bringing the room back into focus. Mr. Calder, the board accepts your resignation. Effective immediately, we acknowledge your candor and your subsequent actions. His gaze shifted, becoming all business. He looked at Maya, who had been watching this entire exchange like a hawk. Now, Strauss said, to the separate and final matter, the Vervline Systems contract. Marla's lawyer, sensing his paycheck evaporating, started to pack his briefcase. Marla herself looked numb. As Ms. Rutledge stipulated in her letter to this board, Strauss continued, this committee was firewalled from the technical review. Our independent compliance auditors have spent the last 48 hours analyzing the Vervline platform, its security protocols, and its projected efficiency gains. The personal events of this week were not a factor in their analysis. Maya sat up straighter. Ms. Rutledge, Strauss said, the committee's report is unanimous. The Vervline Systems platform has not just met, but has exceeded every benchmark for security, efficiency, and data integrity. It is, by a margin of 35%, the most robust system we have ever reviewed. The $80 million contract is approved. Maya closed her eyes for a single second, a silent exhale. We will be adding one clause, Strauss said, a faint, thin smile on his face as he looked at me. A mandatory, real-time ethical transparency audit, to which all our board-level partners will now be subject. You have, Ms. Calder, set a new and rather difficult standard for all of us. Aurelius will meet it. My work was done. My company had won. It had won on its own merits. It was clean. As Strauss gathered his papers, Marla's lawyer nudged her, and she stood up, her face a mask of stone. She was going to slip out before the room could turn on her. Mrs. Pierce, Strauss's voice cut through the air like a razor. This hearing is not adjourned. Marla froze, one hand on her purse. Please sit down, he commanded. The entire room's gaze, curious and cold, pinned her in place. She had no choice. She sank back into her chair, humiliated. Mr. Cutter, Strauss said, I believe you had one final item for the record. Greg looked at the paper he had brought, the one his lawyer hadn't written. It was a single sheet, covered in his own handwriting. Yes, he said. He put on his reading glasses. For the official minutes, I have prepared a summary of my ethical failure, titled Memo on Moral Convenience. He read. It was not emotional. It was a horrifying, clinical dissection of himself. Date, October 18th. Subject, failure to act. Decision point 1. Silence in the face of escalating verbal abuse. Normalizing the conflict. Decision point 2. Prioritizing personal convenience. A social engagement. Over the clear and present physical safety of a family member. Decision point 3. The active, physical choice to close a door. Signaling endorsement and complicity. Consequence. The creation of a morally bankrupt system based on convenient silence. He finished reading. He laid the paper on the table. It was his suicide note, written in corporate memo format. I stood. I walked to the center of the room, to the empty chair. I took my 4-point boundary statement from my portfolio and placed it squarely on the seat. The void now had terms. This, I said to the room, was the seat of complicity. It was the choice to not show up. I took the chair, and I pulled it back, out of the spotlight, rolling it toward the wall until it was just part of the room's furniture again. It is now just a chair, I said. It's available. It's for anyone who has the courage to sit in it and be accountable. I walked back to my seat. Greg, his memo read, his resignation tendered, looked at the chair I had just moved. He walked over to it. He stood before it for a long moment. He placed one hand on its back. The room held its breath. We all wondered. Would he sit? Would he take the seat? He gripped the back of the chair. He looked at me, and he seemed to understand. Sitting was just another performance. It was an act of ending. He shook his head. Once, I need to do more than sit, he said, to himself more than to anyone. He took his hand off the chair and stepped away from it. It was the right answer, the only right answer. This hearing is closed, Strauss said, banging a gavel I hadn't even seen. I did not wait. I did not look at Greg again. I did not look at Marla, who was now, finally, truly, invisible. I picked up my portfolio. Maya was already at the door, her laptop packed, a small, fierce, triumphant smile on her face. I walked to the door, the heavy, polished wood door of the boardroom. I thought, for a fleeting second, of the other door, the cheap, hollow-core kitchen door from 5 years ago, the one that had been closed on me, shutting me in the dark. I reached for the handle of this one. I pushed it. The door swung open, flooding the dark, paneled room with the bright, clean light of the outside hallway. I was the one opening it. I was the one letting the light in. I stepped through, and I did not look back. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment below and let me know where in the world you are listening from. I would love to connect and hear your thoughts. And if you have a moment, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give it a boost by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.